Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you can hear me well. Thank you for joining us today. The video we just watched, we just presented, it is pre-COVID. So Ecuador is here. That's the nature of, the nature of Ecuador will not go anywhere. We are for sure under COVID times, but we're not here to speak about COVID. We're bringing this event to speak about Ecuador, about bringing positive news about what is happening here in Ecuador. So for that reason, we have invited, we have a special guest today. He's a dear friend. He's mission driven and passionate about tourism. And he might be the person that I know who knows most about tourism industry, tourism sector in Ecuador. So we have the privilege to have today with us Patricio Tamariz. He has represented Ecuador internationally. Also, he has served as a former Vice Minister of Tourism. And a lot of you here, I can see some of your names between our attendees. You know him. And he's here today to share with us his experience from a different perspective about what is happening from the archaeological sites, and also something that I have heard years ago about this legend north of Bahía de Caráquez. Patricio is from Bahía de Caráquez, and he has well known about everything happening in this area. So Patricio, welcome, and please, if you have to turn on your microphone, and if you can tell us a little bit about you. I know you have a presentation too, but people who don't know you, they would like to know more about you.
Thank you for the invitation, my good friend. Marcos, really, when you told me, listen, Patricio, I'd like for you to present the lost city of CARA, and I said, great. I've been in Zoom presentations 4 or 5 times a day for the last, since March, basically. Then I said, oh, this really takes me off the routine, and I love this. It's a lot of my passion. I was born in, going to the history of my persons, I'm sorry, but I have to start with, I was born in Bahía de Caráquez back in 1960. And I left for the United States when I was 2 years old. And I remember my dad working really hard in New York and everything. And he was bringing in, he was working at the airport. He brought me to see the Beatles come into to the airport. Imagine that. Now I'm always a fan of the Beatles since then. But later on in life, about 1974, he got sick. He got real sick, and we had to come back to Ecuador. And I studied at the Colegio Americano, the American School of Guayaquil. And I graduated there, and then I went back to college in the United States. And then from there, since about 1983, I got back from the United States, and I started working in aquaculture, actually. You know, one of the really neat things was my mother was the first woman in Latin America to grow shrimp. And it was super interesting. But as you know, as a son, he goes, oh, well, I don't want to do the same thing. You know, I studied aquaculture stuff, but I got into I was a pioneer in the blue crab meat exportation for the United States. I was able to go ahead and export blue crab every day on airplane, fresh crab meat, pasteurized crab meat, whole crabs. And I'm lucky that I had a really good contact in the United States that we were able to sell to Caesar's Palace, to the commissary of the United States Congress. And actually, my product was the main plate that was on the inauguration of George Bush's inauguration party. Imagine. So it was the beautiful big Esmeralda's crabs that we have, huge, and the crab meat. And so, well, I had to say that, because it's important, that basically being able to speak good English and being, you know, a good passionate worker, and I was able to do good things until they closed down my plant in 2003. But they closed it down because of a urbanization ruling. But anyway, then I got into tourism. In 1994, I started tourism. This is part of the story in my presentation that I have to make. And then I was director for the province of Manabí in the year 2000. And then I was the managing director for the whole coast of Ecuador in 2003. And then I became the first director of the promotion board for Ecuador, the tourism promotion board for Ecuador, which was called the Fondo Mixto, for about 3 years.
I'm sorry to interrupt. How did you get involved with the tourism? Because that's a big jump from your previous business to tourism.
Okay, that's part of the presentation, but I'll go ahead and say that. It's because I had gone to Machu Picchu. Okay, I had been there. It was right after Sendero Luminoso, the Shining Path, were you know, isolated and stuff. And so tourism started to go back to Machu Picchu, but there wasn't that many tourists. So I was able to stay at the hotel up there. I was able to be there at 5 o'clock when everybody leaves the site and just be in the middle of these ancient structures with the fog coming in the afternoon. It was surreal. I loved it. It made me an incredible impression of how the Peruvians were very proud of their culture, and at the same time mix it with tourism. So what happened was that when I that was in 1993, 94. And back in 1978, when I had, right before I went back to school in the United States, I had, I'm an avid surfer. I love to surf. And a friend of mine tells me, I want to show you this secret spot. And so I drive down the beach, you know, he's sending me, you know, he's saying, there's a really beautiful wave. We surfed the wave, but as soon as I got out of the wave, he tells me, I want you to come into this forest. It's right from the sand into the first part of the land, right? The first couple steps, all of a sudden I see all these archaeological pieces, all this pottery all over the place with drawings and everything. And then I said, oh my gosh, what's this? And because of my upbringing, you know, in the United States, the North American Indian by the anthropologists and the archaeologists wasn't that famous back when I was in high school and stuff. So I asked my friend, you know, and really the only like history I knew was a Revolutionary War, a Civil War, you know, and that kind of period, you know, the United States independence. And so when I asked my friend, how old are these pieces? He goes, they're probably about 3,000 years old. And that was like shocking to me, you know. This is back in 1978. So, you know, I forgot about the place and everything else. And then back in 1990,
you felt like an Ecuadorian Indiana Jones.
Exactly. It was incredible. I didn't go back. That's the thing. I never went back again, even though the waves were good. But because I went to school and everything, and then I got into the crab part of my life. But the thing was that the interesting is that back then, after coming back from Machu Picchu in 1994, we're very good friends of he just passed away a couple of years ago, the ex-president of Ecuador, Arquitecto Sixto Duran, Boston born and studied in England. He was the mayor of Quito. And he comes up to me actually, we had some coffee and pan de yucas, right, in our house. And he comes up to us and he goes, Patricio, for Maria, my mother, and you guys have to invest in tourism, because I'm going to make the first Ministry of Tourism, and I'm going to put the airport of San Vicente, I'm going to make that into an international airport. And so, wow, you know, the airport didn't go through with Congress and everything else, but the Ministry of Tourism did. But at that time, 3 weeks after that meeting with Arquitecto Sixto Duran, he was president at the time. My mother says, listen, there's this place you're selling on the beach, you know, and we should get, you know, invest in it. Maybe we can make some cabins or start a tourism business out of it. So this is in 1994. I'm driving down the beach, and I'm driving it's 15 kilometers away. I'm going and I reach the place. All of a sudden I find it's, this man with a white beard, white Panama hat, old Panama hat. He's on a hammock and he's reading in English, a bestseller. I'm going, who's this? No, his name is Eduardo Vélez. And so Eduardo Vélez is the owner of Chirije. Mm-hmm. I knew as soon as I got into the place with all the archaeological pieces, that was Chirije, which I had seen back in 1978. Had just been in Machu Picchu, and I told my mom, this is it. We gotta get into this. So it's a beautiful story of how, you know, we get into tourism and everything, but that's on my private side. So I was able to do Bahía Dolphin tours and make Casa Grande and Chirije, and we worked up until the earthquake, and then from there we haven't worked anymore there. But it's an interesting story at Marcos.
Yeah, it is absolutely fascinating. Yeah, so Patricio, you have a presentation, and I think you have the chance to share your screen right now so people can watch it. You can speak about Chirije too. Yeah, okay, let's go. Yeah, El Barco de Santa Marta. Yeah, okay, Patricio, the camera is yours.
Thank you so much. I'm going to make a first presentation of here in PowerPoint, and then I'll go ahead and make a small little video I finished presenting. So this is Bahía de Caráquez, of course, the Mar del Plata of the Pacific, or the Key West of the Pacific. Many of my good friends, the expats, have always said. And you see that little arrow up there? That's the Bajo de Santa Marta. That's the Santa Marta Reef. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. And I will go ahead and start making the presentation. This is a picture of Chirije. And as you see, nice little waves come in and wrap around off the point. And you have a really long left that you can surf for about 200 yards. And this is during our green season. And it's really nice. And on the left-hand side, behind one of the branches, you can see Monte Cristi. So it's pretty close. And it was interesting that once we bought Chirije, I was able to pick up these pieces, and I sent them to the Central Bank of Guayaquil. I actually sent them to my dad. My dad was in Guayaquil, and I told him, please don't say they're from Chirije, but please tell them that the pieces are of Manabí, and I want to know what kind of cultures we have. So, you know, I just picked up pieces from the surface, and all of a sudden, everybody was interested. And then they tell me that Emilio Estrada, the big archaeologist who had discovered Valdivia and had confirmed it with the Smithsonian, that was the oldest ceramics in all of America, all the way from Tierra del Fuego all the way up to Alaska, that the oldest ceramic, the first ones that were doing it were the Ecuadorian, the indigenous cultures that were in the Santa Elena region of Valdivia. And now we know that they're along the whole coast back, you know, almost 4,000 BC. So Emilio Estrada, after that, he starts working on many other projects. And all of a sudden they tell me, what, you didn't know that in his, he goes, masterwork called Arqueología Manabí Central, Emilio Estrada, in the introduction, he has put in bold and in capital letters, Chirije. So he's already naming this, and he names during this period a new culture. So this is back in the 50s, right? And he wasn't. They weren't, after Emilio Estrada died, which he died in 61, right? The book was published in 62. He died in 61, but from there on, not too many archaeologists came up to the north anymore. But what's interesting is that he says that because here's the Mission, the Royal Academy of Sciences geodesic survey team that came here with Charles Marie de la Condamine and to measure the shape of the Earth. Plus, they came to the equator line on the coast first, and they were able to do a couple of experiments, especially one that's with the pendulum, which at sea level on the equator, the distance it carries in the little ball of the pendulum goes to in 1 second is distance. And that information what served for, if 30 years later, it served for the metric system. So actually, you know, up in Cuaque by Pedernales, they're all this information was done. And what's important about this is that the Condamine goes by the coast and actually names in their map of 1736. They published the map in 1751, but during their mission in 1736, they called Chirije the point of Chirije, La Punta de Chirije, on the map. So what we believe, and what the archaeologists have told me, is that this has eroded away. We right now have about 38 hectares of archaeological site there. So this place, thousands of years ago, which was much more into the water. The sea level was a lot more down, like a lot lower level. Like, for example, they're saying that about 10,000 years ago, right as it goes to post-ice age, the oceans were anywhere from 40 to 60 meters or to 100 meters down, and the beaches were way out there, kilometers out there. So at least we know from this information of the map of Chirije that Emilio Estrada says that with all security, it's the Aboriginal or the indigenous name of the place, Chirije. And here's just a map so you can see where it's actually located. It's only in straight line, 32 kilometers from the Manta airport, and only 15 kilometers south of Bahía de Caráquez.
And Patricio, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but what is, and I apologize because I don't know, but maybe some people are asking as well, what is the meaning of Chirije? It means something?
Well, it's interesting. The guys who named the place on the map and put it on the map are the French that go by, and Chirije in French is like Chirije. And so what we don't know is there's an old legend, not an old legend, the first historian of Ecuador, he names that there came a people across the sea, and their lord, which meant their chief, was named in their language, which meant Lord of all, was the Shidi. So we don't know if that has anything to do, if there's a correlation with that. From there, we don't know but there could be something to that, because the archaeologists, when they went and worked in Chirije, they went down 6 meters, like 18 feet down. There's layers upon layers of archaeological stratigraphy or evidence. The first evidence right on top of the bedrock was about in 1 square meter, they got almost 100 pounds of pottery. So they say that first was pretty intensive, the occupation. Okay, that's what we know now. And this is, as you see right now, this is the beach that you go to Chirije, right? And you can see at the end, at the horizon, you can see Monte Cristi. This used to be the old highway of Bahia to Ecuador, to Manta, to Jaramillo. And this would only take 40 minutes along the beach. And of course, you had to time it right with the tides. And on some certain points, you got these seawalls where you put the car up there and wait for the tide to go down and then just keep on going. But it's really hard packed sand. And that's how we've been doing tourism operations since 1994, getting to Chirije on the low tide. So, you have the timetables of the National Institute of Oceanography, and you can, a year in advance, you know what tides count, so you can get there. But it's really an awesome ride. And as you see, there's another road, a Pajonal road, that comes out to the Las Olas project. And from there, about 4 kilometers down, you have Chirije, which is, it's a double platform alongside this old dry riverbed. Here you can see it during the dry season. It's really neat. It's what's it called? It's a terrace all the way to the back. And if you see on the left-hand side coming up on the point, you can see there was actually a landing strip dug into it. This is an interesting part of the information, is that the old owners of Chirije, they didn't know, but they rented it out to these drug lords. They made their own landing strip there back in the 70s or 80s. And this was bombed by the Ecuadorian Air Force. And they threw 2 bombs on it, and one of them didn't explode. And we had a friend of ours who carried it in his pickup truck for about 3 days until his older brother, got really mad at him, and they gave it to the Navy. But it's interesting, all this information gets so hidden away, and it's secluded. And you can see on the right-hand side, you can see where we have these cabins there. And it's a really nice, place.
So, Patricio, let me just stop here. So people can go and visit and stay there?
Right now, we're not operational.
Okay.
And, sorry, Marcos. And actually, we're trying to find a partner to work there or to sell it, because the situation for us has been very difficult. But anyway, this is something that but I'm going to put up my email for anybody that wants more information on this, and I can send them this presentation if they want also.
A good place to visit in Ecuador. Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
Yeah. And these are the original maps of Emilio Estrada that the Central Bank of Ecuador, where they were handling the museums, they gave me. And this is an interesting item that I've put up here, is that how they found the land with these rocks with holes in them, cylindrical rocks, about maybe 3 feet long, 2.5 feet long, and they were used actually as posts, as bases for houses. And this is an old picture of one of the excavations of Emilio Estrada. And here you see me then, after we make the on-site museum and everything, we have these that were just found, and we found out Emilio Estrada thought that they were drilled on purpose. But then we had this geologist come from the University of Michigan, and he showed me that they have found also in the UK, in the United Kingdom, they found these on the beach, and they say that they're actually ancient fossils that were driven, that there was a worm inside these. And it's just, if anybody wants an explanation in detail, I can give it to them. But right now we have a long presentation. But the idea is that this is actually, it was a living being that then afterwards, when in a cataclysmic event and with special sand slate was compressed, and then when there was tectonic uplifting, these actually, all the cliffs that you see alongside the base of the coast, especially from Bahía de San Vicente, there's guys picking every week megalodon, the giant shark tooth, ancient shark teeth. These were ancient sea bottoms, all these cliffs. And here you can see one right there at the base of one of these cliffs. And as you see right there, a good old friend of mine, Ray Bowman, that he found a whale bone there. But you can find archaeological pieces and fossils. I found a fish fossil inside a rock, perfect fish. And then what we did was we were able to build cabins there, and I know most of you that are there, maybe some of you have been there. And this is Chirije. We put a lot of love into it back then. And then here we have a little bit of the cabins that we have there, and down the beach where you can comb the beach for things, and really it's a nice, very nice secluded place. And interesting enough, once we started to work, and you said I became the Indiana Jones. I did. I started to get all these archaeological teams together. One of them was the archaeological team of the ESPOL from the Polytechnic University. They did a great job, and right there you can see the archaeologist without a shirt. He's Cesar Ventimilla. I have help from Javier Vélez and a couple of other. They're talking to Dr. Douglas Uglacher, one of the top physical anthropologists of the United States, of the world. He was able to, once you get into an excavation, you find human remains. And with carbon dating, what date they're about, it's plus minus 300 years that carbon date's given to you. But you didn't know exactly what age the person that died there that was buried there had. Dr. Ubelacher made a big discovery where, because of the shape of the teeth, you could find the age of the bones that the archaeologists would find. This was so interesting to be there with him, talk to him, and him showing me these are pre-ceramic teeth. These are ceramic teeth when the people are making ceramics. You can see that they have time to make ceramics. That's because they got silos, they got corn, they got maize, so they're fermented, and that's why they have cavities. And these guys didn't have cavities and stuff like that. So it was really interesting to have the Douglas Ubelacher. I have a document that he did from Chile. If you guys email me, I can send that to you if you want. And also we had other archaeologists there during this whole time, Ecuadorian and foreign archaeologists. And we made a little on-site museum, and we built in excavated in one of the side of the hills there, as you see that hill going up, excavated there and put all the pieces that were found by the archaeologists, by our gardener, that there were pieces right on top of the surface, or when it rained kind of hard on the riverbeds, these pieces would come out. And this is a Chirije doll. You can see a little bit of the paint on it, right? But this is something that Estrada mentioned back then in the 50s. And some really nice pieces that were exhibited. Right now they're at the Centro de Hoja y Jaboncillo in Puerto Viejo. The on-site museum suffered with the earthquake. The rest of the place didn't. But and you know, they're getting restored in. And here you have a nice, beautiful spondulus shell. For you that don't know too much about this, this was an item of commerce which was super important. It was going down to Chile and all the way up to Mexico. It's a species called Spondulus princeps, with this red rim, where once you polish it all, it becomes very red. And they were using it for beads and for offerings, and it was as worth as gold because it had a very high spiritual and fertility content. And so this was something super important. This was a seal, a cylindrical seal. They used to put vegetable ink on it, and they would color your ponchos or your cotton textiles with this. And this was found by Dr. Jean-Francois Bouchard, who was the professor of pre-Columbian art at the Museo of the Louvre Museum in Paris. And they worked in Chirije, and they also worked in Hapoto, or by Charapoto, where they found a huge complex of artificial mounds. Here we find a piece, it had a beautiful headdress on it, but as you see on the right-hand side of his, or on the left-hand side of his cheek, he's actually chewing coca. So you can see the coca leaf chewing here by him, and of course the typical Monteño nose. Yeah. And here we start getting into what we're going to talk about. Okay, this is really, really neat. That little piece that's encircled on the top. This is it has a beard. You know, and normally, you know, during the Bahia period and stuff, you don't have people, you know, they have the indigenous people didn't have a beard like that. So this is an interesting piece, because there's a lot going on with trans-Pacific contact. But these are the most beautiful pieces of the Bahia culture, where they were 500 BC to 500 AD. These are the Bahia giants. And I remember when there was the World Expo in Seville back in 1990, you know, Colombia had a huge pavilion. You come into the pavilion and you would see them giving you coffee and fruits and stuff. The Chilean pavilion, they actually brought an iceberg. They brought an iceberg from Chile. Fantastic, it was great. And then the Ecuadorian pavilion, you walked into this dark room with this huge, huge showcase with all these giants of Bahia. It was impressive. These are almost a meter tall. They're from 2 to 3 feet tall, and it's really, really, they're one of the largest ceramic pieces of Latin America. And what do we have around Chirije? We have, I remember being director of the province of Manabí, and then all of a sudden looking at a map and it said La Dibujada, the drawing. Why the drawing? I got to go out there. And there's this cave that's with these petroglyphs. Really, really interesting. And now we found there's another cave which is much more interesting. I mean, they're both interesting, but this has really elaborate petroglyphs on it. They're both close to Chone.
Wow.
And here we have the famous stone throne. We call it the Silla Manteña, but it's a stone throne. They're found in Manabí and mostly in the area of Puerto Viejo de Montecristi, in the little cordillera of the hills that you see from the antennas of Puerto Viejo all the way to Montecristi. These up there, back in the 1900s, they found, no, in the 1800s, excuse me, they had found 30 of these stone thrones in one circle. So this place is a place of power. It's called Cerro de Hojas y Aboncillo. This stone throne that you're looking at right now is actually in the Smithsonian. And it was discovered by Marshal Seville in 1906, 5 years before Machu Picchu was discovered. This place is awesome. This place is monumental. It's the largest archaeological site of Ecuador. It has 7,000 hectares. That's about, what, 15,000 acres or something. That was in 1906. 1907, New York Times, whole page. It says a distinct and more ancient civilization was found that would rivalize like with the Aztecs and the Incas. This has been additioned to American archaeology. In the province of Manabí, where these ruins have been discovered, are very interesting, but it's one of the less fields of investigation, archaeological investigation known in South America. So this is from the New York Times, this is Marshal Seville, and this is the last LiDARs that they've taken. These are drones that take with laser and light and radar what's below the vegetation, what's below the surface. And so you can see terraces and terraces of rock, terraces for cultivation here. This is Cerro de Hojas y Aboncillo. It was thought to have been 2,500 hectares, but they found that with the LiDAR and everything, up to 7,000 hectares now. Look at all the terraces that are up there. It's going to take archaeologists 200 years to discover all this. It's really a really incredible site. There's in Picoasa at the base of this, right out of Puerto Viejo, there's a really nice museum called the Archeo Museum. And they got these paths to these places where they found bases of platforms and structures. Here's another one of those LiDAR right on top of one of the hills. You can see all these structures. These are platforms, monoliths. They found a stone throne right close to one of these structures and platforms. So it's really very interesting.
Amazing.
Now we go to any question up to there?
Please
okay.
Go ahead. This is very interesting. Please go ahead.
Okay.
I didn't mean to interrupt.
Okay. No, it's okay, Marco. Anytime. And so Emilio Estrada, who discovered Valdivia, the oldest culture that worked in ceramics in the Americas, also discovered Chirije. But he also, until the day of his death, he believed in trans-Pacific contact. So this is Time magazine in January of 1961, and with the cover of the Cold War, so on the cover of that magazine, and there's an article, a half a page here, called Fuel and Flame, and he mentions Bahía de Caráquez. He says, according to Estrada, no similar oriental-looking objects have been found elsewhere in Central or South America. His theory is that a small group of people from across the Pacific found their way to Ecuador, perhaps shipwrecked near Bahía de Caráquez and founded a colony there. Some of their imported cultural traits, such as a liking for headrests and peaked gables, persisted for a few generations before dying out. So this is important. He's talking, and he talks about Bahía de Caráquez, which is a part of all these elements that I'm going to present to you today. So the first thing is it's called the history of the Kingdom of Quito in Southern America. That's what Historia del Reino de Quito en la América Meridional means. It was made by the Padre, the Jesuit priest, Father Juan de Velasco, who wrote this in 1789 in Italy when he was exiled, because all the Jesuits were exiled 20 years before. And this is the first historian of Ecuador. This is the first history that comes from Ecuador. He gets the information from scribes and from literature and from oral tradition, from indigenous groups, from the Spaniards, and from directly from the priests that accompanied the Spanish during the time of contact. So he says that, and he writes that there was a grand nation that came from across the sea called the CARAs, from the land where the sun sets. And they founded their city called CARA. Their leader was called the Shidi, which meant in their language, Lord of all. From here, they conquered the kingdom of Quito. It is renowned that this nation seized the coast, and because of this, it was called CARA. The head of this nation, or the sovereign, was called Shidi, which in their language meant Lord of all. They constructed over the bay, and that is why it is called Caráquez. First written account of the naming of the bay was from Francisco Pizarro, who conquered the last Inca. And it is Caráquez because of the name of the people. And in the account of Miguel de Stete in 1531. So this correlates with what the natives stated in their oral tradition. This city is also called Cora. Over the very ancient remains of the city, all of cut stone, the Spaniards founded theirs with the same name. All Indians believe that there were very big lands and numerous islands out in the seas, and that their ancestors had come from there. Also, that from their coast, they had gone to these distant lands, passing always that, the Ecuadorians or the indigenous groups would go from our coast to these distant lands, passing always through one island to another, always following the signal of El Camino del Sol, or the path of the sun. They arrived at the first of these islands at about 100 leagues, where they provisioned themselves with dried meat from tortoises, for sure, the Galapagos Islands. And so all these relations or quotes are coming from ancient books that he writes in 1789. And this is something I want to stop here and tell you. This is a photo of the last movie, The Kon-Tiki, right? Thor Heyerdahl went into Quevedo back in 1950 and found all these balsa wood logs, right? He got funding from overseas and brought all those logs all the way to Callao, to the port of Lima, Peru. I don't know why he did that, because he could have just gone out of the coast of Ecuador, which was what should have been. But anyway, he made a movie. It was 101 days. He went on a balsa wood sailing vessel all the way to the Tuamotu archipelago in Polynesia. So he got there. He arrived there, and he made the movie, made an Oscar. The books, everything written. He became a very, very famous person. And Thor Heyerdahl has his own, I think, in Norway, his own museum. What's interesting about this is then in 1960, Vital Azar, which was a Spanish navigator, took a balsa wood sailing vessel from, of course, the balsa logs from the Quevedo area, and he goes from Guayaquil and reaches in 161 days, he reaches Australia. He reaches all the way to Australia on this balsa wood sailing vessel. This balsa wood sailing vessel, the way they built it was around the description of the perfect description the Spaniards made when they first made contact in front of Manabí when they in 1526. That's when Capitan Ruiz finds this the huge sailing boat with 20 Indians aboard with spongulus shells, gold, weights, all these textiles with fish and animal designs on them. They found them in the middle of the ocean, and he made a description. It was like when somebody went to Mars and found something, they would draw this perfectly. They did that. They made a great, it's in the archives of the Seville archives. And this is a quote that if anybody wants to write to me and I can send it to them. Or better, I'll give you a link of my book. My book is called The Secret of Paradise, and it was written with Bo Rinaldi, who is a bestseller, who wrote Vegan Fusion. And this is a really nice book which has interesting quotes that are not in other books. This is to discover our past here on the coast of Ecuador and the beauty that we have in here with our cultural heritage. So going back to this balsa wood sailing vessel, this balsa wood sailing vessel was one of the most important navigational units that were found in the ocean. They found these canoes in the Caribbean, but these were really, really incredible, the way that they would sail. They were saying, and Dr. James Seidler right now, he's making a publication on where it's proven fact, where there's contact directly from the west coast of Mexico with northern Manabí of Ecuador, with the Hamacuaque people. And so Vital Astar proves to the world that he went further on. He went all the way to Australia. And then the scientists and everybody says, okay, you got lucky, you know? So 2 years later, he goes out there with three balsa wood sailing vessels. And one of those balsa wood sailing vessels reaches 100 miles off of Australia, and it just stays there. But the other two balsa wood sailing vessels reach Australia also. So proving that the way these ships were made back then, you were able to cross the Pacific. And then here, we're seeing these underwater pictures of a bay in California, under one of the bays in California, where I was giving a presentation for Ecuador at the Harvard Club in Boston. Finished the presentation, went back to the hotel, called my mom. Mom, is everything okay? How's Chidije? How's the hotel doing? Everything? And she goes, everything's fine, Patricio, but I wanted to tell you something. I just saw on Discovery Channel a documentary on these guys that are saying that they've discovered objects, anchors from China in waters of the United States. And these anchors, these round stones, look like the ones that you have found in front of Bahía de Caráquez in the Bajo Santa Marta. And so I put this here because this is super interesting. After that, I made contact with Gavin Menzies. He was the main guy in this key man in this presentation, where I remember in 2003, if you guys remember in England, they made a presentation on finding one of these, the oldest maps of the world that the Chinese had made. So in 1421, the story is that the emperor, they're in the top of the Ming dynasty, and the emperor says, we're going to go conquer the world. So he does 800 ships, goes out in different fleets all around the world to colonize and to bring back treasures and to tell everyone how important China was. In one of these fleets, Gavin Menzies, he said 16 years of working this. Plus, I forgot to tell you, he was, when I wrote to him and I sent him all this information on Padre Juan de Velasco, the Bajo Santa Marta, what I found there, the archaeological pieces that are in the Bahia Museum and in Chirije, you know, he writes back to me, and he was really, really happy with this. And he goes, Patricio, I was an ex-commandant, British naval commander, and my flagship was the HMS Rorqual, and I was going around the world on a mission like Captain Cook it was a special program with all his fleet doing the what's it called, the journeys of Captain Cook. And he says that his penultimate journey was from New Zealand all the way to where? Okay, Marcos, get this. It was to Bahía de Caráquez to pick up Colombian and Ecuadorian commanders and sailors. And he's, you know, all of a sudden, you know, we make click, and he tells me things that are super, super interesting. And
Nice.
and he tells me, and this is something interesting. Dr. Johann Reinhardt from National Geographic, I'm going to present in a little bit, but also Gavin Menzies mentions that small caravel that's on the bottom, right? That's a 1492, one of Columbus's ships, the largest, the biggest ship that when he came to discover America. The one on top is a Chinese junk, but it's not 1492, it's 1421. These guys were expert navigators, celestial navigators. You know, once you lose the sight of the profile of the coast, you know, you navigate by the moon, by the stars, excuse me, and the sun. And these guys were able to go without stopping at any port up to 2 months, 3 months. So these are like aircraft carriers compared to the Columbus ship. So this is such an interesting story because it talks about going all the way around South America. It talks about the Waldseemüller map, the first map in the world, and why 20 years before the Portuguese and the Spanish mapped out South America, it was already on the map. And it's interesting that one of these fleets had gone around to India, to Calcutta, at that time, the Asian Center, Maritime Center. They picked up this Italian navigator, which became famous later on. They went with him all around, right? When they come back 2 years later, what had happened during that time, 1421 to about 1423, is that the emperor at that moment had done some, he had rebuilt some parts of the old city of Beijing, of Peking. The Forbidden City, and he wasn't in good relationship with the people, with the elderlies, because all of a sudden, you know, he used all the wood from so much forest for 800 ships, and they had also died. A lot of people had died, and then all of a sudden he touches the Forbidden City, and then all of a sudden they have an electrical storm, and he burns, you know, some of the city up, and they oust him. They take him out, and they put his son in. So when this fleet comes back, you know, only 10% of the fleet came back. So around 80 ships come back, and all the information is destroyed because he says nobody comes in and out of the. They did what the Meiji period in Japan. They closed their borders up, you know, so nobody could come in, go out, and no religions, everything. So once they come in with all this information, you know, they stop. If the Chinese would have kept, you know, if this is all true, okay, they just made in China, they made like, I think, a 40 episode program on Zhu Di and Zheng He, which was the admiral of all his fleet, and they found a monument with the 3 admirals and a short, stocky man with European dress, which is the Italian navigator. But what happens in the story that Menzies says he has 16 years investigating this, is that he goes ahead, that navigator takes the maps with him to Venice, which at that time was the center of European maritime center of Europe, you know? So what happens then is that years later, the book says, years later, the Portuguese and the Spaniards know that this map exists, and there's some citations in the book of Menzies, which you should read, where it says, you know, it says that there should be land here because the map says there should be land here already. But anyway, so there's a lot of things that are happening that we don't know about, and when we were talking about Padre Juan de Velasco saying that the first, this grand nation came across the ocean from where the sun sets, and they populated this area. And I didn't put in the presentation, but another piece says of the quotation says that they were more civilized than the ones already there, than the indigenous settlers that were there. So who knows? Who knows? This is something that we need to figure out, you know, what's happening. But Emilio Estrada is also saying, with Betty Mayers from the Smithsonian Institute, that there was trans-Pacific contact. So this is the Bajo Santa Marta, right out there. It's exactly from the point of Bahia, 5 kilometers if you measured it by meters, 5,000 meters out to the Bajo Santa Marta. And this is the story. Okay, that's me surfing, just in case. But what I wanted to tell you is that back in 1978, right as I first discovered Chirije, or a friend showed me Chirije. I'm going out. Usually there's small surf in front of Bahia, and I was always seeing this reef break. You know, if you stand in Bahia, if you know Bahia, if you stand right in front of the Hotel Herradura, if you look straight out, you can see all these breaks breaking way out in the horizon. The one that breaks most to the left, that's Bajo Santa Marta, and that's the one that breaks bigger. The waves break bigger. So this wave was always enticing me, and so I went out there with a good friend of mine, which passed away. He was a lobster fisherman that fished out there in Bajo Santa Marta, and I went out with a couple of friends, and I got in the water. I was the first guy to surf the place. A beautiful peak. You ride the wave, and it's crystal clear. You know, on good days. You know, and so one of these days when we were going out there, the fisherman says, "Don Patricio, people tell me that the fishermen tell me, and I've seen also on special bright nights I can see sometimes on low tides over the reef, I can see structures, geometric structures." Really? So what happened then was that I had gone back to my great uncle, he was an historian, and also Berta Santos was also an historian. On both sides, they start telling me this legend of how there was a city lost by a cataclysm back in the 1700s. And so my great uncle, Gonzalo Dueñas, he's there with the white t-shirt. He's right next to the Archbishop Silvio Haro, who had come with documents from Padre Juan de Velasco saying that there was a city that had been lost by a cataclysm. And they went out there. And then, you know, about the same time, Emilio Estrada, the archaeologist, went out there, but nobody went diving there. So what happens is that I went out there, I donned a mask, I asked a friend for a mask. I went out there and I snorkeled, and I found this 70-yard canal. It was like a stone on one side, stone on the other side, and there was like a space between them, and it just went straight. And I really was impressed by this. That was back in '78. And when I come back and tell my uncle about all this, he sent, you know, and I went out there and got a little piece and sent it to the Central Bank Museum. But at that time, they didn't pay too much attention to this piece of rock because they basically were buying all these archaeological pieces from all the looters that were all around because they were building up their museums. So they were restoring and everything else. But what's interesting about this was that I was able to go ahead and I took pictures. I'm sorry I don't have them here. They must have gotten wet in the El Nino or something. I don't have any of those pictures right now. But the thing was that my captain of the boat, right? It was a skiff where I used to go surfing at. He goes out every night and puts out his lobster net out on the reef, and the lobster come out at night. So he comes up in the morning and they're all tangled up in there, and he goes to the market to sell. But what's interesting is that he goes ahead and asks me, Don Patricio, my motor's broke. Can I borrow the skiff? I go, sure, as long as you bring some lobster tomorrow morning so I can have for breakfast. And he said, sure. So he comes up at 5:30 in the morning. The sun's about to come up, and he has nothing in his hand. And I go, what? You got me up and you don't have anything? No, Don Patricio, I needed for you to see this monster I've caught. What? And so I get on the skiff right next to the Paseo Roberto, and I cross the bay, and I'm at half crossing the bay. I can see the lights just coming out, and I can see this fish right on the, it's not a fish, but this shark right on top of the sand, and it was incredible. I got off the boat, and I went to measure it. It measured 21 feet, 7 meters. And wow. Where was it caught? It was caught right there in Bajo Santa Marta, where I was surfing. And the thing is, you surf there, right? And then all of a sudden, you finish surfing, and there's no beach. You're out in deep water again. You know, this is just a reef. It breaks off the reef. And so, so three days later, he caught another shark there. And finally, from 1978, I didn't go back until 1997. And when I go back, I get a friend, a team of people, and with Eduardo Espinosa, which is right now one of the top shark specialists and biodiversity specialists of the Galapagos Islands National Park. He's a great diver, master's degree in Japan on all the sustainability things, and he's a great diver. He brought a friend of his, which was a diver that would film underwater documentaries in you know, with whale sharks and et cetera. Really, a really nice team. We went out there, and what they found, you know, the stories, there's a lot in between the story. I can't get into it because it's in half an hour or more, so I won't get into it. But there's so much story in this first mission that we went out to the Bajo Santa Marta. So, and what they found there was incredible things, you know. And we did like 3 missions there. And then on the 4th mission, I did a presentation at the National Geographic Society in Washington. And I was able to meet people there. And I met somebody who introduced me to, as you see right here, Dr. Johann Reinhardt. If you, in the yellow National Geographic magazines, when you opened it up, it says Explorers in Residence. You see Marie Leakey, remember the daughter of the archaeologist that found the missing link in Africa, Dr. Leakey. And here you find Johann Reinhardt also, top archaeologist. He was the first guy, one of the first guys to really go ahead and study archaeological submarine, what's it called, wreckages. He would follow the sponge divers in Europe. But he also, in this picture right here, he's in Lago Titicaca. He says all the Andean lakes are sacred lakes to all the indigenous cultures. And he was able to find so much here that he was able to make that little museum in the middle of the Lago Titicaca. And he's one of the top guys. He actually found the ice princess of Ambato, Peru. He was made famous by Bill Clinton when, you know, Clinton, you know, presented him to the world. And every time they finish an excavation, you know, he puts out the National Geographic Society flag. And here you have these mummies, you know, that he found that the Incas, apart from adoring the sun, they would adore the big peaks, the snow peak summits that were in the Andes, and they would make these sacrifices. You know, like a month before, they would give chicha and drugs to these children, and they would sacrifice them up on the hills to these gods. But it's interesting that he's, you know, to have him, you know, 15 days, that's quite a story to have him, you know, to be with him here in Ecuador. And I wanted to show you right here. Marcos, can you see the cursor?
Yeah,
that I'm moving?
Yeah, it is moving.
Okay, here's Bahia right here. So 5 kilometers out, here's the Santa Marta Reef, right, where the waves break. And if you can see, this is key, okay? This is key. Why is it always breaking right here? Because this is very shallow water. This Punta Napo of San Vicente was connected all the way out here. You can see it. It was connected all the way out here. So this is an important part of all this puzzle. We checked maps from 1730 and 1680 of the English and the Spanish Armada, and they're saying there was something, you know, there's something right there. The Bay of Caracas, right there. Again. And again, Bahía de Caráquez.
Wow.
So this was connected. As you see, they put in like a little shallow shelf there, and there's something out there. What did we find out there when we brought out Johann Reinhardt and when we did the first expedition? The first expedition had the best visibility. You're out in front of the bay where all the silt comes out. So the days that we had really clear visibility was the first expedition with Eduardo Espinosa and the guy who filmed documentaries. We found things there that were really unexplainable. And during the Johann Reinhardt trip, there was only about 5 feet of visibility, 3 feet of visibility. But still, there was things that were interesting. Here, you have a round stone on top of another round stone. And this is what he says. To close this exploratory research trip, it can be concluded the interesting topics was the relationship between the oral tradition and the legends and the real archaeological evidence of the Bahía de Caráquez area. From what I saw, they are extraordinary natural structures that are found under the surface in the area of the lowlands of Santa Marta that, due to their few common forms, suggest that they could have been walls of ancient structures, and that for this reason, surely the spongyless divers and fishermen could see underwater, and it could be that since then, it has been thought that there could have been a settlement in the place. Now, with the concrete evidence of the maps of the Spanish Armada and the satellite images, it is known that the reef of Santa Marta were connected to land and was above water back then. And it is possible that there was human activity here. But we cannot conclude that there was a lost city in the area. I believe that once again, the straight and intersecting walls are extraordinary structures of nature. Dr. Johann Reinhardt. And this is us finally finishing a week of work out there. And we had really great divers. And I want to end here and put a little video. It's a short video. It's 8 minutes, but it's really interesting about everything that we found underwater there. Okay, so if you guys please bear with me, I will put this video. Oops. Can you see?
Yeah, we can see. I think we lost Patricio. I don't know what happened. Romina, if you're out there, can you please help us to talk to Patricio? And it was very interesting, all the history that Patricio was giving to us. So let's wait. Yeah, he's back. Yeah, hey Patricio, you're back.
Okay.
So yeah, we can share the screen with him again, and so we can play the video.
Okay.
Okay, that's a different. Yeah, there it is.
Okay. Wait, it stopped, so I gotta refer. There it goes.
playa, me deslizo por manglares, subo al cerro que me lleva al platanal. Cruzo el bosque tropical hasta la sierra, escalando a la cima del planeta, desapareceré, desaparecer. Hey ya, hey ya, hey yo, hey ya, hey yo. Desde tierra hacia todo el universo me desprendo de la atmósfera celeste. Voy flotando a través de las estrellas, acudiendo al espacio sideral. Desapareceré, desaparecer. Hey ya, hey ya, hey yo. Hey ya, hey yo. Hey ya, hey yo. Hey ya, hey yo. Entro por mis poros y las células me llevan al lugar donde yo me escondo cuando necesito desaparecer. Entonces me desperté y junto a mí estabas tú. Llora el agua, que el agua corriendo va limpiando mi camino, va librándome del mal.
So that it was an interesting time, interesting experience, you know, to try to figure out what's there. I'm sure that we have not found everything there. We found pre-Columbian anchors, but what's I think we need to do is, you know, explore the place, declare it a marine reserve. It's beautiful out there. There's beautiful corals. And not all the time it's perfect visibility, but there's some times of the year that it's really nice. And I believe, hopefully, you know, there's so much stuff underwater in the world because of of climate change and not climate change, but post-ice age. There's a special word for it in English. I don't know it. But when the ocean comes up. But anyway, I hope you all enjoyed it. That's important.
Yeah, absolutely, Patricio. This is perfect. So So for some people that didn't know, Patricio got positive for COVID like weeks ago, and you look very, very healthy. And it is very important that we're bringing this information for everyone that wants to know more about Ecuador. So I'm very, very happy with the outcome of this presentation. It has been very informative. And so please, Patricio, can you tell us how people can get in contact with you?
Okay, I should write my it's my email. Let me share screen and see what I can come up with. All right, let me see. Oops, that's not that's not that's a blue crap presentation there. Let me see. Excuse me. Okay.
So, all right. Well, thank you so much. So everyone knows how to get in contact with Patricio. And if any of you would like to visit Chidije and you would like to know what is happening there, I personally recommend to go there. I have gone there. I have been there once, and probably I'm planning to come back. But yeah, of course, Ecuador has so many things to do. And thank you so much, Patricio, for your time and for your knowledge with everyone here. So
there's so much. If you all need any more information on the coast of Ecuador, especially the area of Bahia, I've written a book called The Secret of Paradise. It's in Amazon, and hopefully you'll enjoy it also.
Thank you so much. And this is just a reminder for all of our attendees that you know that we're going to have a raffle for 2 tickets to Galapagos at the end of this month of August. We got a sponsor from a travel agency who are supporting us with this. So just keep watching us. Next week, we're going to be talking about Galapagos. We're going to be talking a little bit of what is happening with the Chinese interruption in the Galapagos Islands, but also we're going to be speaking about this wonder of nature that we have here and we have to protect in Ecuador. So thank you so much again, Patricio. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. Have a nice afternoon.
Thank you, Marcos. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, bye-bye.